Some say nightmares end when you wake up. But what if they begin the moment you leave the city behind? Tonight, on Nightmare, True Horror, we venture into the forgotten backroads, the dying towns, and the endless fields. Places where horror grows wild and deep, like roots beneath the soil. These are 7 true countryside horror stories. Real accounts from those who strayed too far into the quiet. Stories of scarecrows that rot with secrets, fairs that don't forget your face, and barns that were never built for animals. Each one darker than the last. But the final story, oh, that one, it's the most terrifying. Stay with me until the end. You'll see why. If you're new to the channel, subscribe or don't. But don't say I didn't warn you when the corn starts whispering your name. And when we're done, tell me in the comments, which story will haunt you tonight? Let's begin. The lawyer's letter arrived on a Tuesday. You've inherited the Elias Harlow farmstead, 40 acres north of Broken Bow, Nebraska. My uncle's name, Elias, smelled like rust and mothballs. I hadn't seen him since I was 6, when he gripped my shoulder too hard at Grandma's funeral and hissed, "Blood's the only thing that don't rot." Broken Bow was the kind of town where gas stations sold live bait and Bibles. The farmhouse crouched at the end of a dirt road, its windows boarded, paint peeling like sunburned skin. I had quit my teaching job in Omaha after the divorce, desperate for a reset. Fresh air, Sarah, my therapist said. Something simple. The first night I found the barn key hanging from a nail in the porch rafters. Cold, even in July. The barn door groaned like something alive. Dust swirled in my flashlight beam, settling on shapes. A rusted chainsaw, jaws of bent nails, and a workbench stained black. Then I saw the floor. 5 sets of iron shackles bolted to the concrete. Above them, the wall was pocked with holes, finger-sized, and streaked with brownish-red drag marks. My phone buzzed, shattering the silence. A text from an unknown number. "Leave. Now." Mrs. Greer, the neighbor who brought me a casserole the next day, wouldn't step past the porch. Her knuckles whitened around the dish. "Your uncle," kept to himself. But folks used to say he had a green thumb. Crops grew unnatural good. She stared at the barn, even in droughts. That night, I dreamt of screams muffled under soil. The cellar hatch under the kitchen rug wasn't on the property deed. The stairs creaked as I descended, flashlight trembling. The beam caught a stack of Polaroids nailed to the wall. Travelers, hitchhikers, families. A woman in a yellow sundress posed in front of the barn. Their smiles faded across the series. The last photo showed the sundress woman on her knees, Elias grinning behind her, a shovel in hand. A thump echoed above me. The cellar door slammed shut. Sheriff Dern's laugh was a dry cough. Elias, harmless old coot, sold the sweetest corn in the county. He leaned over his desk, breath reeking of licorice. Reeking of licorice. But if I were you, I'd stop digging. Some roots ain't worth pulling up. Back at the farm, crows circled the barn. Inside, fresh dirt mounded near the shackles. Something glinted in the soil. A gold locket. Inside, a faded inscription. To Marie, 1978. The local library's microfiche spat out a headline. Hitchhiker vanishes near Broken Bow, 1978. Marie Kress, 22. Last seen in a yellow sundress. Ryan drummed the roof as I unearthed the locket's match in the barn's dirt. A femur polished smooth. The knock came at midnight. A man in a preacher's collar stood in the storm, eyes hollow. "Your uncle fed this land," he said. He said, "Fed it with sinners," said their fear made the soil rich. He pressed a diary into my hands. He ain't the only one who believed it. The diary's pages crackled. Elias handwriting, manic and cramped. April 12, 1981. The Carter boy fought, 1981. The Carter boy fought, made the corn taste sweeter. A engine growled outside. Headlights sliced through the curtains. Sheriff Dern's truck. The barn door was open. Fresh shackles gleamed. Sheriff Dern stood in the shadows, licorice rolling between his teeth. "Elias taught us the old way. Town's hungry, Sarah. Drought's coming." I ran. Wheat stalks lashed my face. Behind me, boots crunched. A gunshot split the air. The preacher's pickup skidded into the road. "Get in! We didn't stop until Omaha." The diary in my lap fell open to a final entry. Sarah turns 16 tomorrow. My brother's girl. Blood's the richest crop of all. They found the preacher dead in his church last week. Licorice stuffed in his mouth. Sheriff Durham retired to Arizona. The farm was bulldozed for a Walmart. But tonight, my sink spat up a clot of black soil. Corn sprouts curl through the cracks in my apartment floor. And outside, a shadow watches, waiting for the drought. The soil never forgets blends psychological dread and true crime, anchored in the visceral horror of complicity. The real monster isn't the barn, but the town's hunger, a rot that outlives its host. The cotton candy machine whirred loudly as I handed a sticky blue cloud to a freckled boy, his eyes wide with delight. It was my third summer working the concession stands at the Riverdale County Fair, and the familiar sounds of carnival rides, laughter, and country music filled the warm August air. The fairground sprawled across 30 acres of once empty fields on the outskirts of our small town, transformed each summer into a patchwork of colorful tents, rickety rides, and the hopeful dreams of traveling carnies. My name is Ellie Morgan, 22 years old, saving up for my final year of college, while helping my uncle run his concession business. Not glamorous work, but the tips were good, and I enjoyed watching families make memories, even if it meant going home each night with sugar in my hair and the lingering smell of fried dough on my clothes. 5 minutes till your break, Ellie. Uncle Mike called over his shoulder as he restocked the napkin dispenser. Sarah's coming to cover. I nodded, my wrists aching from twirling paper cones all morning. The fair had been unusually busy for a Thursday. Something about the weather forecast predicting rain for the weekend had brought everyone out early. My eyes drifted across the crowded midway, taking in the familiar sights. Teenagers trying to win oversized stuffed animals, toddlers clutching balloons, parents checking their wallets with increasing concern. That's when I first noticed him, a tall man in faded blue overalls standing absolutely still amid the moving crowd. While everyone else laughed and talked, he simply watched, his face partially obscured by the brim of a straw hat. Something about his stillness made my skin prickle, though I couldn't explain why. Earth to Ellie, Sarah's voice snapped me back to reality as she tied on her apron. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I shook my head. Just tired. Think I'll walk around a bit. Get some fresh air. As I stepped away from the sugary confines of the booth, the summer heat hit me full force. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling through messages while navigating through the crowd. A text from my roommate reminded me to pick up milk on the way home, so ordinary compared to the carnival atmosphere surrounding me. At the edge of the midway, the petting zoo had drawn its usual crowd of excited children and indulgent parents. I paused, watching a little girl with pigtails and a pink sundress feeding a baby goat. Her laughter rang out clear above the noise of the fair as the goat nibbled corn from her small palm. She reminded me of my niece Emily. Same dark curls and gap-toothed smile. I found myself smiling too, until I noticed the man in overalls again. He stood at the fence of the petting zoo, watching the children with an intensity that seemed wrong. Watching the children with an intensity that seemed wrong. When his eyes met mine, he didn't look away. Instead, his mouth curved into a slow smile that never reached his eyes. I dropped my gaze, pretending to check my phone, but when I looked up again, he was gone. I scanned the crowd, suddenly uneasy, but couldn't spot him anywhere. Uncle Mike always said I had an overactive imagination. Growing up on a steady diet of true crime podcasts and thriller novels probably didn't help. Still, something felt off. My break ended too quickly, and I returned to the cotton candy stand, the encounter with the strange man fading as the afternoon rush began. The fair announcer's voice crackled over the loudspeaker, announcing the evening's demolition derby and reminding visitors about tomorrow's pie-eating contest. It wasn't until nearly closing time that I heard the first whispers, a mother frantically asking if anyone had seen a little girl in a pink dress, then security guards speaking quietly into radios. The carefree atmosphere of the fair began to shift, tension spreading through the crowd like a current. What's happening? I asked Sarah as she counted quarters in the till. Some kid wandered off, she replied with a shrug. Happens every year. They'll find her hiding in a bathroom or asleep under a table somewhere. But as the minutes ticked by, the mother's desperate calls grew more frantic. I remembered the little girl at the petting zoo, dark curls, pink dress, and my stomach knotted. Then I remembered the man watching her, his unsettling smile. Before I could second-guess myself, I approached the nearest security guard, a heavy-set man with a walkie-talkie clipped to his belt. "Excuse me," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I saw a little girl in a pink dress at the petting zoo earlier. There was a man watching her, tall, wearing overalls and a straw hat. Something about him seemed off. The guard's expression changed immediately. "When exactly did you see this?" he asked, raising his radio. Within minutes, I was sitting in the fair's security office, a glorified storage shed with a desk and 2 metal chairs. The local sheriff, a woman named Karen Matthews, with tired eyes and practical short hair, took my statement while her deputy pulled up security footage on a laptop. "Can you describe the man again?" Sheriff Matthews asked, her pen hovering over her notepad. I closed my eyes, trying to recall details. Tall, maybe 6'2", thin but strong-looking. Faded blue overalls worn at the knees. Straw hat pulled low. I couldn't see his face clearly, but his smile. I hesitated. His smile wasn't right. The deputy called us over to look at grainy footage from a camera mounted near the petting zoo entrance. We watched as the little girl, identified as 7-year-old Lily Cooper, fed the goats. Then a tall figure in overalls approached, spoke briefly to her, and pointed towards something off-screen. The girl looked up at him, nodded, and followed as he led her away with his hand lightly touching her shoulder. Timestamp says 2:17 p.m. The deputy noted. That's almost 6 hours ago. Sheriff Matthews' radio crackled. "We found something by the south entrance," a voice reported. "Some stuffed animals from the Midway Games scattered in the parking lot. Looks like they might have been dropped." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The little girl hadn't just wandered off. "Listen," Sheriff Matthews said, turning to me. "You said something about his smile being not right. What exactly did you mean?" I struggled to articulate what had disturbed me. He was practiced, like someone who learned to smile from watching others do it. The sheriff and deputy exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. "Does this man seem familiar to any of you?" the sheriff asked, turning her laptop around. The screen showed a black and white mugshot from what appeared to be the 1980s. A younger man with hollow cheeks and eyes like empty wells. Raymond Cutler, responsible for 3 child abductions at county fairs in 1984, always wore overalls and approached children near animal exhibits. My blood ran cold. That's not possible. That photo must be 40 years old. Cutler died in prison in 2012. The deputy added, "Heart attack." Then who did I see? My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. "Could be a copycat," Sheriff Matthews said, but her expression suggested she wasn't convinced. "We're looking at every possibility." As the night deepened, the once cheerful fairgrounds transformed into something sinister. Floodlights cast long shadows, and the ride stood silent and skeletal against the night sky. Search teams combed every inch of the grounds while police questioned carnival workers and attendees. I sat in the security office, replaying the encounter in my mind, wishing I had done something earlier, said something sooner. Around midnight, Sheriff Matthews returned, her face grim. "We found Lily's hair ribbon in a ditch about 2 miles down Route 16. We're expanding the search perimeter." "I want to help," I said, standing up. She hesitated, then nodded. "Stay with Deputy Gaines. Maybe you'll spot something others might miss." The search stretched into the early morning hours. Volunteers from town joined, forming lines to search fields and wooded areas around the fairgrounds. The rhythmic sweeping of flashlights and occasional shout of Lily punctuated the night. Local news vans arrived, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like strange metal plants. At 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Do you remember the abandoned Millridge farmhouse? She's there. Come along or she dies." My hands shook as I showed the message to Sheriff Matthews. Her reaction was immediate. "We need to trace this," she said, calling it in. "And you're not going anywhere alone." The Millridge farmhouse stood 3 miles from the fairgrounds, abandoned for decades after a fire claimed the lives of its owners. Locale teenagers sometimes dared each other to spend the night there, but most people avoided it. Within 20 minutes, police vehicles converged silently on the property, lights off to maintain the element of surprise. "Stay in the car," Sheriff Matthews ordered me. But I couldn't. Not when I felt partially responsible for not raising the alarm sooner. The farmhouse loomed against the night sky, its windows dark, empty sockets in a decaying face. The porch sagged like a broken jaw. As officers approached with weapons drawn, a board creaked somewhere inside. What happened next unfolded with nightmarish clarity. The front door opened, and a small figure in pink stumbled out, hands bound in front of her. Lily was alive, pale and terrified, but alive. Behind her, barely visible in the darkness, stood the man in overalls. "Let her go," Sheriff Matthews called out, her gun trained on the doorway. "You weren't supposed to bring them," a voice said, and with a jolt, I realized he was speaking to me. "We had an agreement. I am away, never agreed to anything," I called back, my voice breaking. The man stepped forward into the beam of a flashlight, and I gasped. His face was gaunt, cheeks hollow, just like the mugshot. But this wasn't a man in his 70s. He looked exactly as Raymond Cutler had in 1984. "History repeats," he said, his unnatural smile spreading across his face. "It always repeats. Everything happened at once. Officers rushed forward as Lily broke free, running toward us. The man retreated into the darkness of the house. Shots were fired. Someone pushed me to the ground. When I looked up again, flames were dancing in the windows of the farmhouse, spreading with unnatural speed. By dawn, the Mill Ridge farmhouse was nothing but smoldering ruins. No body was recovered from the ashes. Lily Cooper was reunited with her parents, physically unharmed but silent about what had happened during those missing hours. 2 days later, I returned to work at the fair, which had reopened after a one-day closure. Life continued with a strained normalcy, though attendance was noticeably down. Parents kept their children closer, and security had been doubled. As I handed cotton candy to a hesitant customer, Sheriff Matthews approached my booth. "We got the DNA results back from Lily's dress," she said quietly. "There was blood on her sleeve that wasn't hers." "And?" I asked, already knowing the answer would make no sense. "It matches Raymond Cutler's samples from 1984. She looked as bewildered as I felt. "That's not possible. DNA degrades over time. And dead men don't bleed." I wanted to feel relief that Lily was safe, that the nightmare was over, but something told me it wasn't. That night, as I locked up the cotton candy stand, I noticed a small stuffed animal, a pink rabbit, sitting on the counter. I hadn't seen it earlier, and no child had left it behind. Pinned to it was a note written in careful block letters. "See you next year, Ellie." The Riverdale County Fair continues for another 3 days. I've asked Uncle Mike for time off, but he needs the help. Tonight, I'll be back at my booth, serving cotton candy with shaking hands, scanning the crowd for faded overalls and a straw hat, wondering about the man who left no footprints in the ashes, whose blood should have degraded decades ago. The fair comes to Riverdale every year. It always has. It always will. And I can't help but wonder, how many years has he been coming with it? The sign outside read simply, "General Supplies." Beneath the peeling paint and rust-streaked siding, the faded storefront looked as though it hadn't welcomed a customer in years. To me, it seemed like exactly the kind of sleepy, forgotten shop you'd find buried deep in the endless cornfields of Nebraska. Just one more curiosity in a state full of empty spaces and silent, abandoned towns. My name is Jake Anderson. At 26, I'd quit my office job in Omaha to spend a few months traveling the Midwest, camping, hiking, photographing forgotten places. That afternoon, driving down a narrow dirt road with nothing around but swaying corn and vast, featureless sky, I spotted the shop, sitting isolated at the outskirts of a tiny settlement called Redfield. Population 117. I parked my truck in the dusty lot, the wheels crunching gravel softly beneath them. The afternoon air hung still and heavy, broken only by the distant cawing of crows. Pushing open the old wooden door, I stepped inside, greeted by a sharp scent of cleaning chemicals and mildew. Inside, shelves lined the walls, all stocked identically with neat rows of 3 items: rope, bleach, and large black trash bags. Nothing else. No candy bars, no sodas, no household goods. The fluorescent lighting buzzed weakly overhead, flickering occasionally, and casting uneasy shadows across the plain white walls. Behind the counter stood a thin, older man in a faded blue apron. His gray eyes were unreadable, watching me silently. The name tag pinned crookedly to his chest simply read, "Clerk." "Afternoon," he murmured. His voice carried an odd detachment, hollow as the empty shelves. I chuckled nervously, gesturing around. Interesting selection. "Just rope, bleach, and trash bags." He stared at me expressionlessly. We keep it simple. Everyone already knows what they're here for." The words hung heavily in the silence between us. My smile faltered. Something about his tone unsettled me deeply. "I'm just passing through," I stammered. "Uncomfortable." I stammered. "Uncomfortable. Thought I'd grab a soda or something." He shook his head slowly. "No sodas here." I nodded awkwardly, backing toward the door. "Well, thanks anyway." Stepping back outside, I felt immediate relief. Something was off about the shop. The clerk, the emptiness, the oddly specific inventory. I tried to shrug it off, climbing quickly into my truck and heading toward town. Redfield itself was small, quiet, quaint even, but oddly lifeless. Houses lined the main street, paint faded and peeling. Curtains hung loosely behind dark windows. Doors closed tight. I saw no children playing, no neighbors chatting over fences. A diner sat at the end of the street, promising comfort and familiarity. I parked and went inside, eager for human interaction. A waitress approached, wearing a strained smile. "Passing through?" she asked, filling my coffee cup. "Just stopped by that supply store outside town." "Kind of odd," I remarked cautiously. Her hand froze briefly, coffee sloshing slightly onto the countertop. Her smile tightened. "It's better not to talk about that place." I frowned, confused. "Why? What's going on?" She hesitated, glancing around nervously. Leaning closer, she whispered, "You're safer just passing through. Stay too long, you'll find out why." My pulse quickened. "Find out what?" The bell above the diner door jingled sharply. The waitress straightened abruptly, fear flickering in her eyes as two men entered. Their faces expressionless, eyes focused rigidly ahead. She moved away quickly, leaving my questions unanswered, unease settling deeper. I decided to leave town immediately after eating. But when I returned to my truck, my heart sank. 2 flat tires. Nails protruded deliberately from the rubber, sharp and menacing. Someone had sabotaged my truck. Fear rising, I scanned the empty street. Curtains twitched behind windows. Eyes watched silently, hiding behind glass. "Having trouble?" a voice asked calmly behind me. I spun around. Standing there was the clerk from the store. His expression remained blank, eyes flat, emotionless. "Someone slashed my tires," I said nervously, trying to appear calm. His gaze didn't waver. "Unfortunate. You'll need supplies. Rope, bleach bags." A chill gripped me. "What?" He stepped closer, voice soft but firm. "Everyone here eventually needs them." My stomach twisted. "What's going on here? Who are you?" His face softened slightly, a strange sorrow crossing it. "This town has traditions. People go missing. Visitors mostly. The others, they don't like outsiders poking around." "Missing?" My voice trembled. He nodded slowly. "It keeps things simple. Rope binds, bleach cleans, bags carry. Everything has a purpose." I stepped back, horror swelling. "You help them?" His eyes darkened sadly. "Survival." I turned, bolting into the diner. "Call the police," I shouted desperately. The waitress stared blankly, shaking her head. "No phones here. No phones here." They disconnected everything. Behind me, the door swung open again. The clerk entered, followed by several townspeople, faces vacant yet determined. One man stepped forward, eyes hard. "You're not the first. Won't be the last." Panicked, I darted toward the kitchen, stumbling through the back door into darkness. I ran blindly, lungs burning, feet slipping in mud, hearing footsteps closing in behind me. Voices whispered urgently, coldly, "Keep it simple. Rope, bleach bags." Then I fell, crashing to the wet ground, pain radiating through my ankle. Before I could rise, rough hands seized me, dragging me roughly back toward town. I screamed, fought uselessly as ropes tightened painfully around my wrists. A hood dropped roughly over my head. Inside a damp basement, the hood was removed. The clerk knelt before me, face grave. "They demand sacrifice. This is how Redfield survives." "Please," I begged, desperate tears blurring my vision. "Don't." He hesitated. "Regretful. I'm sorry. I tried to warn you subtly." Cold metal pressed sharply against my throat. A woman whispered softly behind me, voice gentle yet chilling. "Don't fight. This makes it cleaner." My breath hitched painfully, but suddenly, outside, faint sirens wailed distantly. growing louder. Confusion flickered through the gathered townspeople. Police? Someone murmured, panicked. Chaos erupted instantly. People scattered frantically. The clerk leaned closer urgently, slicing quickly through my ropes, whispering harshly, "Run! Never come back!" Stumbling outside, flashing lights filled the street. Officers shouted commands, guns drawn. Relief flooded me. Someone had somehow reported my disappearance. A missed call finally alerting authorities. Days later, safe but haunted, police explained. Redfield had quietly operated this murderous tradition for decades. Victims' cars stripped and disposed of. Disappearances dismissed as travelers getting lost. The store clerk cooperated fully, revealing his complicity born of desperation, fear of becoming the next victim. Weeks passed. Nightmares persisted. Memories of rope burning wrists, bleach stinging nostrils, plastic bags rustling ominously in dark corners. One evening, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside, a single faded photograph. The store clerk standing outside the shop, sad eyes staring directly at me. Scribbled on the back in shaky handwriting. "We kept it simple, but they'll find another way. They always do." I moved states away, changed my name, started fresh. Yet even now, years later, passing through isolated towns, I wonder, how many others are out there, quietly keeping things simple? And will the next traveler realize too late that everyone there already knows exactly what they're there for? The old farmhouse loomed against the Georgia sky, its weathered clapboard peeling like sunburnt skin. I'd been hired to photograph it for a real estate listing, a side gig to fund my portrait studio in Savannah. The place was an hour's drive into nowhere, surrounded by cotton fields and gnarled oaks dripping moss. My camera bag bounced against my hip as I stepped onto the porch, the boards creaking under my sneakers. The air smelled of damp wood and something sharp, like rusted iron. Inside, the foyer was dim, dust motes swirling in the slanted light. My phone pinged with a text from the client. "Just get the shots. Don't touch anything." But I figured they were picky about their crumbling relic. The living room was frozen in time. Floral wallpaper curling, a sagging couch coated in grime. My Nikon clicked, capturing the decay. A faint hum vibrated through the floor, like a generator buried deep. I adjusted my lens, focusing on a chipped mantle, when something glinted in the frame. A photo tucked behind a cracked vase. I pulled it free. It showed a woman, mid-30s, clutching a camera, her eyes wide with terror. Her backdrop was this room. My stomach twisted. The photo was faded, but her fear was fresh. I shook it off, chalking it up to old clutter. The client, Mr. Hargrove, had sounded gruff on the phone, a retired farmer with no patience for questions. I moved to the kitchen, where the linoleum curled like claws. My camera flashed and the hum grew louder, now a low thrum that buzzed in my teeth. Another photo lay on the counter, half buried under moldy papers. A man this time, maybe 40, gripping a Polaroid camera, his mouth open in a silent scream. Sanarum, Samatera. My hands shook as I stuffed it in my pocket. The air felt heavier, like someone was standing too close. Upstairs, the hallway was narrow, the wallpaper stained brown like dried blood. Milo, my best friend and occasional assistant, was supposed to meet me here, but his truck had broken down in town. He'd texted, "Be there in an hour. Don't get spooked." I wished he was here now. A door creaked open on its own, revealing a bedroom with a sagging mattress and a single chair. On the chair, another photo. A young man, camera strapped to his chest, his face pale, eyes locked on something behind the lens. My breath hitched. Every photo showed a photographer, scared, in this house. None looked recent. Their clothes dated 80s, 90s, early 2000s. The hum sharpened into a whine, like a drill biting wood. I backed out, my sneakers scuffing the floor. Downstairs, the front door rattled, though the wind outside was still. I froze, camera dangling from my neck. "Milo," I called, voice cracking. No answer. The rattling stopped, replaced by a soft scrape like a blade on stone. I grabbed my phone, texting Milo. "You here?" No signal. The screen flickered, then showed a new email. Subject, "Nice shots, Ellie." My blood ran cold. Attached was a photo of me, taken minutes ago. aiming my camera at the mantel. I was alone, or I thought I was. My heart pounded as I scanned the room. Shadows clung to the corners, too thick, too still. The scrape came again, closer, from the staircase. I crouched behind the couch, its fabric reeking of mildew. The hum pulsed, sensing with my heartbeat. My phone buzzed. A video file, same sender. I shouldn't have opened it, but my thumb pressed play. The footage was grainy, showing the living room from a high angle. I was in it, kneeling by the mantel, oblivious. The camera panned to the doorway. A figure stood there, tall, gaunt, holding a knife. The video cut to black with a whisper. "Ellie." I bit my lip to keep from screaming. The scrape was on the floorboards now. Slow, deliberate. I clutched my camera, its weight grounding me. The client's warning echoed. Don't touch anything. Too late. I disturbed the photos. My eyes darted to the ceiling. A smoke detector hung above, its red light blinking steadily. Too steadily. A camera. I stifled a sob, realizing the house was watching me. The scrape paused, replaced by footsteps, heavy and uneven, circling the room. I held my breath, praying for Milo's truck, for sirens, for anything. The footsteps stopped. Silence was worse. My phone lit up again. Subject: "You're next." Another video. This one showed my car outside, parked by the cotton field. The camera zoomed in on my license plate, then panned to the farmhouse. A shadow moved in the upstairs window. My silhouette, moments ago. The video ended with the same voice. "You took my pictures." My mind raced. Hargrove, he'd hired me. But his voice had been too eager, like he knew I'd come. I remembered a blog post I'd skimmed on Reddit about a Georgia farmer who collected trophies from trespassers. Photographers, drawn to his abandoned house, never seen again. Headlights flashed outside. Milo's truck. Relief surged, then died. His engine cut off, but he didn't approach. I peeked through the blinds. His truck door was open, his phone glowing on the seat. Empty. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "He's with me." A photo followed. Milo, unconscious, slumped in a cellar, a camera strapped to his chest. The footsteps resumed, now above me. Hargrove was in the house. He'd been here all along, watching through his lenses, collecting his art. His motive was sickeningly clear. He didn't just want photos. He wanted the fear in our eyes, preserved forever. I crept to the front door, my hands slick with sweat. Wait! The knob turned, but the lock held. A low chuckle came from the staircase, close enough to feel the air shift. I bolted for the kitchen, grabbing a rusted pan from the sink. The hum was deafening now, vibrating through my bones. I smashed the smoke detector, wires sparking, but the red light didn't die. My phone pinged. Subject: smile. A live feed loaded. Me, in the kitchen, pan raised, filmed from the light fixture. I screamed, swinging at the bulb. Glass shattered, plunging the room into dark. Police found me hours later, curled in the pantry, Milo's truck still idling. I'd gotten an anonymous tip, traced to a burner phone. Milo was in the cellar, drugged but alive, a fresh photo of him pinned to the wall. The house was rigged with cameras, dozens, hidden in vents, clocks, even the photos themselves. Hargrove was gone. No trace beyond his name on the deed. The cops said he'd been luring photographers for years, obsessed with capturing their final moments. My camera was missing, but they found the others, each with a single shot, a terrified face staring into the lens. I quit photography, moved to Atlanta, got a desk job. Milo's okay, but he flinches at flashes. I can't touch a camera without shaking. My night's plagued by the hum, the scrape, the red lights blink. Last week, an email arrived, no sender. Subject: missed you, Ellie. Attached was a photo. Mine in my new apartment, unpacking boxes. The angle was high, like a smoke detector's view height. The August sun beat down on Black Creek Road, turning the air thick and wavy above the asphalt. Cicadas buzzed like tiny chainsaws in the heat-drowsed trees, lining Old Man Grady's endless cornfield. His house, a paint-peeled clapboard skeleton, slumped back from the road, half hidden by overgrown weeds and the towering green stalks. It was the kind of place parents warned you about, the kind that fueled local legends whispered after dark. And then there was the Scarecrow. It stood maybe 50 yards into the field, visible from the road, a lumpy silhouette against the green, mounted on a crooked cross. This one was off, stiff, dressed in faded overalls and a flannel shirt that looked too bulky, its burlap sack head tilted at an unnatural angle, stitched grin seeming less cheerful, more like a rictus. "Betcha won't touch it," Billy sneered, nudging me. He was local born, fueled by the bravado of knowing these backroads. Me? I was just visiting my cousins, bored out of my skull, easily susceptible to a dare. Chloe and Sam, the other townies, chimed in, goading me on. "Everyone knows Grady puts curses on it," Chloe whispered, eyes wide. "Keeps trespassers away. It's just straw." I scoffed, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. The Scarecrow looked wrong. Flies buzzed lazily around its head, ignoring the ripe corn nearby. A faint, unpleasant smell, like old meat left in the sun, drifted on the breeze. "Prove it then, city boy," Billy challenged, heart hammering against my ribs. Fueled by pride and the humid pressure of the afternoon, I pushed through the first rows of corn. The stalks were taller than me, dry leaves rustling like whispers closing in, blocking the view of the road, my friends' nervous faces. The air grew still, heavy. The smell got stronger. Sweat prickled my neck. 50 yards felt like a mile. Closer now. The Scarecrow loomed. The stitching on the burlap face was crude, thick black thread like surgical staples. One button eye stared blankly. The other was missing, leaving a dark hole. The clothes were faded, stained with something dark that wasn't mud. The straw poking from the cuffs looked dry, brittle, almost powdery. The flies were thicker here, a low, constant hum. My hand trembled as I reached out. The dare felt stupid now, childish. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but their expectant faces were burned into my mind. My fingers brushed against the straw, sticking out from a tear in the flannel sleeve. It wasn't crisp. It didn't rustle. It crumbled, like ancient paper, dissolving into fine grayish dust under my touch. The burlap around the tear disintegrated, revealing something underneath. Not more straw. Something leathery, brownish yellow, stretched taut over sharp angles. I snatched my hand back, a strangled gasp escaping my lips. What the hell? Curiosity warring with rising nausea. I poked the spot again, harder. More straw dust puffed away. The tear widened. I saw bone, a knuckle joint, yellowed and dry, then more leathery skin, like old parchment, clinging to the shape of a human hand. My breath hitched. Bile rose in my throat. I ripped at the flannel sleeve. The fabric tore easily, rotten. More straw dust fell away, revealing a desiccated forearm, tendons like dried leather cords. This wasn't a scarecrow stuffed with straw. This was the stuffing. Panic detonated in my chest. I scrambled back, stumbling over corn roots, heart pounding like a drum solo. I turned and ran, crashing through the stalks, not caring about the leaves whipping my face. The only thought, escape, 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 escape. I burst back onto the road, gasping, covered in dust and scratches. Billy, Chloe, and Sam stared, their taunting expressions melting into confusion, then alarm at the sheer terror on my face. It's not straw," I choked out, pointing back towards the field, towards the silent sentinel. There's a body in there. A dead body," Chloe screamed. Billy's face went white. Sam just stood frozen. It took forever for Sheriff Brody's cruiser to arrive, kicking up dust on the shoulder. Brody was a large man, face etched with the weariness of someone who'd seen too much small-town weirdness. He listened patiently to my stammering explanation, his expression unchanging. Then he sighed, a deep, rattling sound that seemed to pull the heat right out of the air. He ran a hand over his thinning hair. "All right, son," he said, his voice gravelly. He looked towards the silent cornfield, then back at Grady's dilapidated house, where a curtain twitched in an upstairs window. "Show me." He followed me back into the corn, the kids trailing nervously behind. The smell hit him too. His nostrils flared slightly. He approached the Scarecrow cautiously, pulling on latex gloves he produced from a pocket. He didn't need to tear the clothes like I did. He just gently probed the figure, his touch professional, detached. He shone a flashlight into the empty eye socket. Then he straightened up, pulling off his cap, wiping sweat from his brow despite the grim discovery. He looked back towards the road, towards the silent house. He sighed again, that same soul-deep weariness. "Damn it, Grady," he muttered under his breath, almost too low to hear. Then, louder, looking at me, at the terrified kids, his voice flat, devoid of surprise. "Third one this year?" They took old man Grady away later. He didn't struggle, didn't say a word, just stared straight ahead with pale, empty eyes as Brody led him to the cruiser. They found 2 more scarecrows deeper in the fields, dressed in clothes that matched missing persons reports from neighboring counties. Loners, drifters mostly. People who wouldn't be missed quickly. Grady never explained why. Maybe loneliness curdled into something monstrous. Maybe he just liked the company, arranging his silent, mummified audience in the whispering corn. The town talked about it for weeks. Then the whispers faded, buried under new seasons. But I never forgot. The crumbling touch of straw that wasn't straw. The empty eye socket, the buzzing flies, and Sheriff Brody's sigh. The sound of horror becoming routine. Sometimes, driving past cornfields late at night, I see a shape on a pole in the distance, and my breath catches in my throat. Just straw, I tell myself. It's always just straw, isn't it? Inantini. And Shaitan. Alpeshkari. And Simneshar. Afistasi. Harmony Creek looked like a postcard somebody forgot to mail. Rolling hills, tidy farmhouses, a white steepled church. I was just passing through, my beat-up sedan wheezing its last breaths, when I saw the flyers tacked to the telephone poles. Annual Harvest Moon Party. All welcome. My car needed a mechanic. I needed a break. And the town radiated an almost aggressive friendliness. Seemed like kismet. The party was already in full swing on the town green when I arrived that evening. String lights crisscrossed between oak trees. A local band mangled country hits on a makeshift stage. And the air hung thick with the smell of grilled corn, cheap beer, and something else. A cloying sweetness, like overripe fruit. Everyone seemed to know everyone, exchanging hugs and hearty laughs that felt just a fraction too loud. They welcomed me, the obvious outsider, with wide smiles and questions that probed a little too deep. Staying long? Traveling alone? Traveling alone? What brings you way out here? It felt less like curiosity, more like assessment. I noticed 2 others who didn't quite fit the mold. A young couple with backpacks and hopeful, slightly lost expressions, probably lured in by the same flyers I saw. We exchanged awkward nods, fellow aliens under the scrutiny of the native population. The locals were nice enough, offering me food, introducing me around, but their eyes lingered. Conversations sometimes stopped abruptly when I approached, resuming with forced cheerfulness. An undercurrent beneath the surface, like a dark shape moving under still water. As the harvest moon, huge and orange, climbed the sky, Mayor Abernathy took the stage. A portly man with a folksy charm that didn't quite reach his sharp eyes. He spoke of tradition, of community, of the bounty the land provided. "And tonight," he boomed, his voice echoing slightly, "we give thanks, as we always have. The ceremony of gratitude awaits." He gestured towards Miller's farm, bordering the green. Midnight in the heart of the field. A ripple went through the crowd, a shared understanding that excluded me and the backpacker couple. It sounded quaint, but the way the locals murmured agreement, the sudden intensity in their faces, it felt heavy, mandatory. Curiosity, maybe laced with a growing unease, pulled me along when the crowd started moving towards the cornfield. Just before midnight, torches were lit, casting flickering, monstrous shadows. The path led deep into the corn, the stalks towering over us, rustling like dry whispers in the sudden silence. The air grew cooler, carrying the earthy smell of turned soil. We emerged into a large clearing. In the center, a rough stone altar I hadn't expected. No overt symbols, but its presence felt ancient, purposeful. The locals formed a wide circle, their faces illuminated by the torches, expressions rapt, almost trance-like. Mayor Abernathy stood by the altar, and there, near him, stood the backpacker couple. They looked confused, maybe a little drunk, smiling uncertainly as Abernathy placed wreaths of dried corn husks on their heads, calling them the honored guests of the harvest. It felt wrong, terribly wrong. A low chant started, a guttural humming that vibrated in my chest. It wasn't religious, not in any way I recognized. It was primal, rhythmic. Abernathy raised his hands. He spoke of the soil, of cycles, of giving back what was taken to ensure future bounty. His eyes gleamed in the torchlight. The backpackers looked increasingly nervous now, their smiles fading. They tried to edge back, but sturdy-looking farmers subtly blocked their path, still smiling that placid, empty smile. I wanted to run, push through the circle, but I was hemmed in, pinned by the weight of 100 watchful eyes. The chanting grew louder, the air thick with unspoken intent. Abernathy produced clay cups, offering them to the couple. They hesitated, then drank, likely wanting to appease, to smooth things over. Their eyes glazed over quickly, too quickly. Drucked? The chanting reached a crescendo, then stopped abruptly. Abernathy smiled benignly. "The land accepts our thanks," he declared. "The cycle continues. May the harvest be plentiful." Just like that, it was over. The locals dispersed quickly, quietly, melting back into the cornrows towards the town green. No backward glances, no discussion, just an unnerving, unified retreat. I lingered, hidden by the stalks, heart pounding. I saw Abernathy and a few of the farmers lead the now docile backpacker couple deeper into the field, away from the path, away from everything. I stumbled back to the green, the forced gaiety resuming, though quieter now, tinged with something else. Relief? Satisfaction? I couldn't sleep. At dawn, the green was spotless. Tents down, trash gone, as if the party had been a dream. I looked for the backpackers' beat-up van, still parked near the edge of town. I asked the woman at the diner where they might have gone. She wiped the counter, her smile unwavering. Placid. Oh, them. Left early, I expect. Folks come and go. I asked the mechanic working too slowly on my car. "Nice young couple," he said, not meeting my eye. Guess they were eager to hit the road. Everyone had the same answer, the same empty smile, the same refusal to acknowledge anything happened. They were gone, vanished between the midnight ceremony and the unnervingly clean dawn, absorbed by the cornfield, by the town's hungry traditions. I didn't wait for my car. I left Harmony Creek on foot, walking miles to the next town. The image of those smiling faces, the rustling corn, and the vacant eyes of the honored guests burned into my mind. The harvest moon still hangs heavy in my memory. The harvest moon still hangs heavy in my memory, and I know, deep in my gut, that somewhere, in the rich soil of Harmony Creek, the cycle is waiting to continue. The land always gets its thanks. The summer sun hung low in the Arkansas sky, casting elongated shadows across the dirt road as I drove through the countryside. The landscape was a picturesque blend of rolling hills and sprawling fields, dotted with rustic barns and the occasional farmhouse. With the windows down, I could smell the sweet scent of wildflowers mingling with the dry earth. I was on my way to visit a friend in Little Rock, but the allure of the open road drew me into a detour that I would soon regret. As I wound my way deeper into the countryside, I noticed an old farmhouse strategically placed at the end of a long gravel driveway. Its white paint was chipped, and the once vibrant shutters hung precariously on their hinges. A faded sign on the porch read, "Welcome," in a crooked hand-painted font. It piqued my curiosity, and before I knew it, I had pulled over, my car crunching on the gravel. The porch creaked under my weight as I stepped closer to the door. I hesitated, feeling an odd chill despite the warmth of the day. Just as I was about to turn back, the door swung open, and a woman appeared, her smile wide and inviting. She looked to be in her 60s, with a head full of gray curls and eyes that sparkled like the surface of a calm lake. "Hello there. I'm Clara. Would you like to come in for some lemonade?" she asked, her voice warm, but laced with an undercurrent that made me uneasy. Caught off guard by her hospitality, I nodded. "Sure, that sounds nice." Inside, the house smelled of old wood and something sweet, perhaps freshly baked cookies. Clara led me into a cozy living room adorned with family photos and floral patterns. It felt like a step back in time. I sat on a lumpy couch as she bustled into the kitchen. "Just a moment, dear. I'll get you a glass," she called over her shoulder. As I waited, I scanned the room. The walls were lined with photographs of smiling faces, but one picture caught my eye. A young man in a baseball cap and a wide grin, standing next to Clara. He looked familiar, though I couldn't place where I had seen him. A sense of discomfort settled in my stomach. "Here you go," Clara said, returning with a tall glass of crystal clear lemonade. "I made it special, just for you." I took a sip, the tartness refreshing but oddly cloying. "Thank you. This is really good." She sat down across from me, her eyes never leaving mine. "You know, you look just like my son," she said suddenly, her smile fading slightly. "He died in 2003. The chill that gripped me deepened. I felt my heart race as I struggled to respond. "I'm sorry for your loss," I managed, forcing a smile that felt brittle. Clara's expression shifted, a shadow passing over her face. "He was such a good boy. Always so kind. I just miss him so much," she murmured, staring into her glass as if searching for something lost. The atmosphere thickened, and I felt a pressing weight on my chest. I glanced at the door, the light outside flickering as clouds gathered ominously. "I should really be going," I said, attempting to rise. No, don't be silly," Clara said, her voice suddenly sharp, blocking my path to the door with surprising strength for her age. "You're just like him. You can't leave yet." Panic surged within me as I stepped back, my heart pounding in my ears. "I really need to. Please, stay a little longer." Her voice rose, a desperate plea that sent a wave of dread through me. "I just want to talk." I could hear the faint sound of thunder rumbling in the distance, mirroring the turmoil building inside me. The room felt smaller, the photos on the walls seeming to close in, their eyes watching me, judging me. I turned to the window, the sky darkening with an impending storm, and I could see the trees swaying violently outside. "Clara, don't you want to hear about my son?" she interrupted, her voice suddenly cold. "He used to love lemonade too, just like you." The glass in my hand trembled, and I set it down on the table, my breath quickening. She shouted, her eyes now wild, the warmth replaced by a fierce intensity that chilled me to the bone. In that moment, the house felt alive, the walls whispering secrets, echoing the laughter of a son long gone. The photographs seemed to pulse with memories, each one a reminder of the life Clara had lost. I took a step back, my mind racing, trying to find a way to escape this woman who had become a portrait of grief turned sinister. Suddenly, a loud crash of thunder shook the house, and I seized the moment. I lunged toward the door, but Clara was quicker, her hand shooting out to grip my wrist tightly. "You look just like him," she cried, her voice cracking. "Don't leave me!" With a surge of adrenaline, I twisted free, my heart pounding in my ears as I flung the door open and bolted outside. The wind whipped against my face, and rain began to fall, drenching me in an instant. I sprinted down the porch steps, the gravel biting into my feet as I ran toward my car. I could hear Clara's voice behind me, a haunting mix of sorrow and rage. "You can't leave! You're mine now!" I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking, and finally managed to unlock the car and jump inside. I slammed the door shut, just as Clara appeared on the porch, her silhouette framed by flashes of lightning. Her face was twisted in anguish, a haunting image that would forever be etched in my mind. As I sped away, the rain poured down in torrents, obscuring my vision. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her chasing after me, but the farmhouse stood still, a dark silhouette against the stormy sky. The further I drove, the more the adrenaline faded, replaced by a chilling realization. Clara wasn't just a lonely woman. She was a mother consumed by grief, her mind shattered by loss. I had unknowingly stepped into a world where the line between love and madness blurred, where a fleeting moment of kindness had turned into a nightmare. Days passed, but the memory haunted me. I researched the woman, the farmhouse, and her son. What I found was enough to freeze my blood. A local news report detailing a tragic accident in 2003. A young man who had died in a car crash. Clara's son. I couldn't shake the feeling that she had been waiting for someone to fill the void he left behind. Someone who looked just like him. Now, every time I pass through the Arkansas countryside, I feel a shiver run down my spine. The invitation to that farmhouse still lingers in my mind. A chilling reminder that kindness can sometimes conceal the darkest horrors. And as for Clara, I can only hope that she finds peace. But I know that the next traveler may not be as fortunate as I was. We followed 7 footsteps into the dark, and not all of them led back out. What began as ordinary roads and quiet farms ended in rot, ritual, and the kind of horror that doesn't need monsters. Just tradition. If you've made it to the end, congratulations. But remember, survival doesn't mean you're safe, just that it isn't your turn. Yet. Subscribe to Nightmare True Horror, if you haven't already, because there are more roads to take, and not all of them are paved. Leave a comment below which story stayed with you, which one felt a little too real. Until next time, sleep lightly, and never trust a town that smiles too wide.